All right, so here I have the practice coloring that I've created for you all, and I'm just going to show you how I would go about starting this, working through it, colors I'm going to choose, so on and so forth. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get out like my basic greens, got light green, regular green. You're also going to be using white to create highlights to help yourself blend. And you may also want to get out a couple different reds. And you might be like, brewer girl, you colorblind, that stuffed animal, teddy bear, balloon animal is not red, it's green. But remember that complementary colors, and red is a complement of green, can help darken a color, so you don't have to necessarily use black, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna start off by kind of adding just a light layer of color pencil. One thing I might recommend doing is, you know, if you've never used these color pencils before, you might want to kind of give yourself an idea of what the colors are. So you can grab like a scrap piece of paper and kind of figure that out for yourself. As you begin your project, I would also recommend like writing on the back of your paper the name, colors of the color pencils that you use, or their number, if you can see all of their number. That way you can kind of keep track of what color pencils you are using. So I'm going to start off light. I'm going to start off with this pale green, just to give a little bit of a base. And you'll see I'm not going super hard. You can see like my hands are super close to the front of the pencil. Okay, I'm just kind of lightly applying the color here. I'm also going in little circles with my color pencil so that I'm also blending as I go along. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm also going to move this so I can actually look at it as I go. So I'm also going to kind of mark out for myself kind of where about the highlights are. I'm just kind of going lightly with my color pencil. That way I don't color there, or I don't put a whole lot of color in that area, because it can kind of be hard to get white to stick on top if you've already put a whole lot of color pencil on your paper. The paper that we use has a pretty good tooth to it, so it holds on pretty well, but you know, it's not infallible. So I would just kind of mark out the areas for yourself kind of lightly, like I'm doing here, of where the highlights are. The shadows, you don't have to worry about as much, just because you can always go darker, but it's a little bit harder to go lighter. So you can see I've kind of put out the highlights here. There's finer details going on, like I can do this mark here of this curve with the white here. We're really wanting to try and make it look like a balloon animal, okay? So we're gonna put down this light bit of color. I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure. I'm just getting down kind of a base of color for myself as I go about here, okay? And then we can start putting in some darker colors, okay? So I've got this green. It's good to layer different colors on here. It makes it more dynamic. It makes it more interesting to have these different colors kind of play out as you are creating your color pencil. And I think it's a good idea, you know, to kind of play around with what can be seen, and layering those different colors, values. I'm gonna probably pop in some yellow in here for parts of highlights. which will make it kind of interesting, okay? Now the other thing to keep in mind is this is a balloon animal, so it's curved and it's pliable, so there's a little bit of like squeezing involved in this. It's not like a solid object, it's got air in it. So, you know, make sure that you kind of keep that feeling going in your balloon animal. So you can see here, I'm kind of just popping in these colors. In here it's going to be quite darker because it's kind of in a recess. It's getting pulled inside. So I'm going to put some more color in here. I might pop in some red. I might choose which red is the best red for this area. Do I want a cool red? Do I want a warm red? Kind of like that red. Yeah, I think I'm going to go in here with this red. And just kind of lightly, you know, you don't have to be super hardcore. Okay, because remember, we're all about layering and blending as we go in here, okay? And then I can come back with my other greens and kind of help blend in this red, okay? So you would just kind of work alongside here. You know, take your time, go lightly, okay? You'll need to apply more pressure later, but you don't want to go hardcore right out of the gate because then you'll have nowhere else to go. Okay, so I'm gonna continue working on this and you can watch how I do it, and then I'll come back after a little bit. All right, so here I have the practice coloring that I've created for you all, and I'm just gonna show you how I would go about starting this, working through it, colors I'm gonna choose, so on and so forth. So the first, all right, so I've gone ahead, I've added more color. One thing that you can use to help you blend is you can use a white color pencil to kind of come in here and help you blend your colors, especially like in the highlights area. So you can do that. Another thing you can use is a colorless blender. It'll look something like this. It might not be exactly like this one, but the nice thing about the colorless blender is once you know you kind of get it down to the value that you want, you might have these little bits of white kind of showing through. What the colorless blender does is it helps kind of just cover up those white parts with the pigment that you already have on your paper. It kind of just helps spread it out. Now this you would wait to do until you've got everything pretty much set. It's kind of like a final thing, but it does help kind of smooth things out and really put the finishing touch on your work. The one thing you do want to make sure is before you start using it, you kind of look at the tip and see if there's any color on it. You might want to take a scrap piece of paper and kind of just clean it off like so before you get started. So I'm going to continue working on this and I'll come back and kind of show you what I've done. All right, so I've worked on this one some more, and you can see how the color pencil is filling in here. This is kind of the level of color pencil that we are looking for. It doesn't have any white spots. You would see here, like the white spots, that it has, like, we'd want to color it some more, at least use a colorless blender in order to get rid of these white spots. But this is what we're really going for. So you can see I've started doing some shadows. I put a little bit of green in the shadow just as like a little reflective element to it, but you can see how it's kind of coming along, and this is what we're going for with this exercise, just getting used to using the color pencils, seeing what happens when we layer, seeing what happens when we kind of lighten up on the pressure. And then also using different colors, like complementary colors, to really enhance our drawing and making it a lot more dynamic and interesting for the viewer. And then finally, we're trying to make it look three-dimensional, so it has some kind of life to it, and it looks like something you could actually hold. It doesn't look flat anymore. So this is what we're going for. Ideally, you would finish the whole thing, but I want you all to at least practice using the color pencil so that when you do your project, you have some experience, and you can kind of make mistakes on this before you get going on your project. All right, so I finished up this practice page, the one that I'm having you all do just to practice working on color pencil, as well as trying to make your forms look three-dimensional and rounded. So I finished this up. You can see here there aren't any really white spots of the paper showing through, which is what we're looking for. And if we happen to find some, what we would do is we would take our colorless blender, which is this pencil, and then it really helps just kind of smooth everything out and get rid of those white spots. So you can see here we have highlights, we have shadows, we have medium value areas. The balloon looks like a balloon, it looks rounded. We have this cast shadow, which are all things that I'm looking for when you eventually do your project.